Welcome to Potter Revisited, episode 91. I'm Tori.
And I'm Shay.
Today we are covering chapter 31 of Goblet of Fire, the third task.
Or, as we like to call it, opting out of the opt-out option.
But it's finally time for the last task in the Triwizard Tournament, which has been, a long time coming.
It's been a bit of a journey.
Yes.
It's been a long time coming because, it's been a cruel summer for Harry. And
Actually, in Goblet of Fire, his summer's not that bad, to be honest.
that's a fair fact. He's had worse summers.
Leaping off from last chapter, Harry goes into the Pensieve, and Dumbledore rescues him out of there. But he tells Ron and Hermione everything he saw.
Except for the personal Neville business. Good job, Harry. Keep your mouth shut.
Yes, because that's a secret. But he tells them everything else. And they're all kind of speculating about, Voldemort getting stronger. Snape was a Death Eater, but now he's good, apparently.
Fudge being hella suspicious of Madame Maxime. Ron being a little bit speciest about thinking being friends with giants would make you look like a bad person. Hermione calling Ron out on his speciesism shit. She's like, pardon me, sir. That's bullshit, and I respect it.
Yeah, Hermione has really good empathy there, because she's like, yeah, I would probably tell people I had big bones if people were going to judge me for, my heritage.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but she has a right to try to avoid the racism. Like, speciesism, I guess. I'm not entirely sure the correct term.
Yeah, when they go to bed, Harry kind of looks over at Neville sleeping, and he has this, really big sympathy for Neville, because he kind of tries to go put himself in Neville's shoes and be like, what if my parents were alive but they didn't recognize me, or they couldn't take care of me? Because he says that even though he's an orphan, he still has people looking out for him, and people always are, really kind to him for things he doesn't really remember. But Neville, is in a different position where his parents are technically alive, but they don't know who he is, really.
Harry gets a lot of sympathy for being an orphan, but everyone neglects the fact that Neville's kind of like an emotional orphan.
Yeah.
And Harry gets to sort of preserve the good memories, however few they are, of his family and hear good and uplifting stories about his family. But Neville's constantly going to visit the shell of his parents and having these memories of being not remembered and not having happy, warm thoughts with them that to some extent, as the most recent memories, probably override some of his earlier memories of them where they were still themselves. And that's heartbreaking. And Harry gets closure, right? His parents are dead. They know what happened to them. That's closure. Neville sort of doesn't get to start healing because it's still happening every day,
And this is where Harry kind of goes on this tangent in his mind about Voldemort being like, Voldemort's the reason why Neville's parents are like this. Really, he's the reason that he doesn't have parents. And it's just like Voldemort's done all these awful things to all these people. And it just feels like this is the first time Harry is just really considering like the big scope of what Voldemort has done, not only to him, but to other people.
Yeah, he's realizing that he's not basically the only orphan of the Dark Wizarding War. He's one of many. And there are survivors of that war that are still dealing with the wounds. And it's all because Voldemort's a great big dick.
And Harry's kind of pissed off about it. He's just like, how could you do this to me, to Neville, who is this nice guy, and to everyone else that has lost someone? And
yeah, it's heartbreaking. So for the first time in this entire book, Harry's actually properly preparing for a task at the Triwizard Tournament. It's good of him to decide to finally do that. Hermione specifically is putting aside her studying and helping Harry. And that's kind of another sort of sad repercussion of Harry being thrown into this tournament against his will, is that the people who love and care about Harry also have to sort of prioritize not letting Harry die over things like their exams. And Ron probably wouldn't study that hard regardless, but Hermione absolutely would, and
yeah,
she's probably still going to do well, but it's a casualty of them deciding that Harry should have to do this, is those that love him and care about him stepping up. And specifically Harry, because Harry only knows 3 spells, so Hermione really does have to carry a lot of the weight of what's going on. And she does a really good job of doing that, even though she shouldn't have to.
I feel like by the end of they're kind of learning all these hexes and jinxes that Harry knows about 10 spells now.
Yeah, but before this, he knew about 3, But yeah, so Hermione's really helping him. Ron's helping as well. And Minnie G is helping by providing practice space. Because, she's a fair play person. She's not cheating. She's not breaking the rules by helping Harry or preparing him. But she's assisting in a non-rule breaking way that will help Harry a little bit, because she follows those rules.
I feel there's also some competitive edge there because she's not offering Cedric a place to practice.
Yeah, but you gotta think Cedric has a place to practice.
I just remember Minnie during Quidditch games and stuff where she's trying to be completely uninvolved, but she deeply cares about competition.
Yeah. And Cedric has the advantage of being old enough to participate and also having made that choice for himself. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a little bit of sympathy for Harry being forced into it from those who know that's what happened. She's not cheating as blatantly as, like, Snape would have cheated if it were someone he liked in the tournament, for example. You know what I mean? She's trying to toe the line. But one of the things I love of the spells Hermione teaches Harry is this compass spell that basically just points north so he can find his way through the maze. And I think that's such a smart Hermione specific thing because I don't think that's something the boys would have thought to learn without her. Like they definitely would focus on like the exciting combat and obstacles and be like, okay, we need to know jinxes and curses and counter curses. But Hermione doesn't really lose perspective, and she remembers that first and foremost, it's a maze. And the basic thing about mazes is getting lost and trying to find your way. And like, it seems like such a simple thing, but I think it's something that like only Hermione would really come up with, and it ends up being one of the most helpful things during his time in that maze. And I just love that she, despite being only like 14 years old, can take the time to be like, we need to not just focus on the noise and the mystery and the excitement. We need to focus on the core base of it as well, which is maze, directions.
Well, Hermione's always like kind of logic based. So I feel like in the grand scheme of things, Harry and Ron are focusing on you're going to have to fight like obstacles. So you need a lot of like offensive spells. But Hermione is logical, being like, well, the object of this is to like get into the middle of a maze. So you need to know what direction you're going in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Harry actually talks about how he feels more confident about this task compared to the others. And part of it is because, he knew beforehand kind of what it was going to be, and he has his friends helping him with the new jinxes and the curses. But also, I just feel like he does kind of say that he's done this before, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's very similar to the Philosopher's Stone, or
even a little bit the Chamber of Secrets,
where he's going through obstacles. But this time, he's actually prepared for the obstacles because Philosopher's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, they were kind of going on the fly.
Yeah, he's got an advantage. He's been there before and survived it without being prepared. So now got a bit of a leg up.
But now he's like, you know what? I know I'm going into a maze and I have all these spells and I can remember them. So, he's in a better position. But to ruin this, kind of like confidence Harry has going for him, on the day of the task, Rita Skeeter releases a new article about him, of course, and Ron and Hermione try so hard to keep it away from him.
Yeah.
Which I kind of wish this had been in the film a bit more.
Because they're so bad at being subtle and like, never mind, no big deal. They just can't.
Yeah. Hermione opens it, she spits out like her juice or something, and then Ron takes it, and he's like, oh no, it's nothing, don't worry about it.
Yeah, no big deal. Harry handles it really well, though.
I just think the timing of it seems suspicious because, of course, she releases it the day of the tournament, right before he's going into it. And the content of the article is obviously that she's changed her opinion on him, and now Harry's actually crazy and dangerous.
Yeah.
Because he's passing out everywhere and his scar hurts. And it's still crazy to me in the whole Rita Skeeter kind of debacle of this book that she's still writing these pieces about minors.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, and most, like, news things, you can't even name a minor.
Yeah.
Without, like, permission.
I mean, I guess I think of it as, like, I guess the closest thing I can think of is junior sports. Like, you read articles about how the junior hockey teams played, and, like, they're not all 18 yet, So you're like, okay, this kid had a bad hockey game, and they'll criticize them, and this kid had a good hockey game, and they'll criticize them. And to me, when it's, like, true and accurate interpretation of something they did, that's different than what she's doing, which is, like, gossip, hearsay, and not at all about his performance in the tournament. Like, you could absolutely talk about Harry Potter and say, he used this spell, he used this technique, he seemed a little nervous going in, you can talk about him in a way that's like accurate journalism, despite him being a minor. But what she's doing is not journalism. It's gossip blogging.
Well, it's kind of just like, this one feels more kind of,
character assassination.
I guess slanderous, because she has unnamed experts kind of speculating on Harry's, like, mental well-being.
Yeah.
Which never happens in, like, real journalism. You can get sued for that.
Harry has so much money. I feel like he needs a friend who's very, like, litigious and is like, you could sue them, and, like, encourages that. Now he's like, oh, fuck, I could, couldn't I? Like, all right, maybe I'll do that then.
Yeah, but I know ideally that Rita's, sources are probably just, like, random people or people she made up.
Completely misinterprets what they say. But
it's just, like, it's so crazy to the idea that, like, even like speculating on someone's mental state as an adult, you don't publish that. But Hermione finally comes to the conclusion of how Rita's been spying on everyone, as they saw Malfoy, being weird and having his hand up by his mouth outside earlier on, and she kind of like reflects on the hand and runs her finger through her hair, remembering the bug.
And the use of the term bugging is what really gets her, I think.
And in classic Hermione, form, she's like not gonna tell Harry and Ron anything. She's just like, okay, I gotta go.
Because last time she figured something out and ran off, it's not like she got petrified and turned into stone and stuck and out of the story for like multiple chapters. No, it always makes sense to keep this to yourself and go running off by yourself, because that's never ended badly.
Hermione likes her private, side quests that she does herself.
Yeah. And I get that, but you gotta like write down, this is what I suspect before you run off in case you die or get petrified, Hermione. She can't be perfect. She has to make mistakes once in a while,
McGonagall comes over and she mentions that, the families of the champions have come to visit and they're in, the side chamber off the Great Hall. And Harry's like, well, Dursleys aren't going to be here, so that doesn't apply to me.
Not me problem.
But it did make me think, if one of the champions had been Muggle Born, because we know that Hermione mentions that Muggles can't come to Hogwarts because of all the protection charms. They can't see it. If they come close to it, they are kind of repelled away from it. So, if a Muggle-born student had one of their parents to come, would they even be able to come onto, the property?
I mean, maybe there's a special potion they can take, or some sort of, maybe it's sort of like Secret Keeper style, where if Dumbledore personally walks them over the perimeter, it's fine.
Yeah, it does feel weird that, Muggle-born parents are sending their kids to a school they have never been to or seen. And could never visit.
Could never physically. Yeah, especially when you think about Lucia showing up to watch Draco's Quidditch games. Some of the parents have the opportunity to see their kids occasionally during the school year and go and support them during these things. Is that just not an option if you're Muggle-born? Sorry, sucks to be you.
Yeah, because I feel like most boarding schools have family days or something, because I feel like being away for most of the year from your family is hard. But yes, and then you have these Muggles that are they first learn about this whole other life that their kid's apparently going into, this whole other world, and then being oh, by the way, your kid's gonna be there for most of the year and you can't see them, and you can't see the school either.
Yeah, seriously.
I'd have some questions.
Me too. I also really love that the Weasleys step up for Harry to be his family. And I think it's hilarious that the author once again needs to remind us the only important thing about Bill Weasley. Remember him? He's hot. Remember how hot he is? Just so you remember. The thing about Bill, he's really hot. I'm okay, we get it.
Yeah, Flair's looking at him and she's yeah. And Harry's yeah, she likes what she sees.
Mm-hmm. She's yeah, long hair, yeah. I think Harry's proud of that too, in a way, even though it's not really his brother. He's that's right, the pretty Vila girl thinks my fake brother's handsome. Everyone's damn right he's handsome.
Yeah, but Harry decides to take Bill and Mrs. Weasley on a little tour of Hogwarts, which I think is really fun because Bill mentions that he hasn't been to the school in 5 years since he graduated, and so it's cool to see everything, and Mrs. Weasley likes to see things that she didn't have when she was growing up there.
Yeah, the Whomping Willow.
She mentions the caretaker before Hagrid, and there's a little tidbit where she mentions that the fat lady'd shoot her out because she's out to 4 a.m. with Arthur, and the Weasleys, Mrs. Weasley's always on her kids to not break the rules and be good. But there she is at probably 16, 17.
She was a teen. They were all teens at some point. She's very conscientious of what they get up to because she knows what she got up to and it was no good.
Yeah. But of course, Amos Diggory's there, hanging out with his kid, and he has to get the last word in with Harry, despite Harry, just existing.
Minding his business.
I get Amos. He comes out so annoying, and he's just that parent that's living through his kid. But I get he wants to protect his kid, because I would feel Cedric's too nice, I feel to stick up for himself in certain ways. But I don't think it doesn't matter to Cedric, really. The publicity about it. He has internal self-worth and value. But it means a lot, I think, to Amos that, his kid wasn't mentioned in this newspaper article. I think that would have been a big deal for him.
He was slighted, yeah. And for some reason, that's Harry's fault, is the annoying part. It's such a displaced sense of blame. I honestly think, though, with a father like Amos, it's kind of insane how Cedric turned out so, nice, reasonable, not a raging egomaniac. Clearly his father thinks he's got golden touch, and everything he touches is perfect and flawless, and everything he does is correct and beautiful. And like that's the kind of thing that turns a kid into a complete and total nightmare of a human being. And somehow Cedric managed to avoid that and like be decent and humble, and he seems like a cool guy to hang out with. If he behaved the way you would expect from his father, you would find him intolerable and he would just be such a narcissistic monster. Like, thank goodness he turned out, I don't know how it happened, but he turned out really well.
There's always some of those kids that you have like the worst parents and you look at them and you're like, how are you so awesome? And your parents are so like batshit crazy.
Yeah, he overcame. Maybe his mom is really, really modest and nice about everything, including him. Or maybe he finds his father so annoying he needs to like balance it out actively. Like every time his dad's like, my son is the smartest kid in the school, Cedric's like, I got a C in history of magic. Like he's like trying to pull everything around him back to reality.
It is very interesting because Molly actually like, sticks out for Harry and she's like, Amos, you work at the ministry. Rita Skeeter is like full of shit. Like, why are you taking this out on him? And it's just like, yeah, Molly, why are you taking that out on another person when you know that Rita is,
Yeah, Molly, good point. Hypocrite much.
We also find out that Percy's having a hard time at work. They mentioned that, he was taken in for questioning. It looks like the instructions he received weren't actually written by Crouch.
Percy, accidental Death Eater, maybe? He's like out there doing evil by accident.
Yeah, he's not allowed to judge the tasks anymore. Currently, his Fudge is coming to do it instead. And I think this is like a big setup for, Order of the Phoenix preparing for right before the fallout, because obviously Percy is taking this very hard. This was his first job.
That's really rough for him, honestly. What are the chances your boss ends up being kidnapped, impersonated, and you end up being manipulated as a part of that? Like, that's rough luck. That's worse than my first job.
I feel it's just part of the ministry should be to blame for this, because in no way should Percy, as like, in an entry-level position, be like not monitored enough.
Yeah.
That someone's like, oh, your boss has been out sick under kind of suspicious circumstances and he's not writing to like a superior.
Yeah.
To like oversee you, because in no way should Percy be managing a department at 19.
Yeah, he's like very young. He's too young to be. Could you imagine being like a 56-year-old man who's worked at the ministry since he was 18 and this tiny, scrawny ginger kid comes in and is like giving you orders? You'd be like, who are you? Are you Amos Diggory's son? Because that would make sense.
Really shows how well the ministry runs under Fudge, because...
Garbage. It says a lot about government.
A lot about government. A lot about Fudge's government. Not great. Molly comes face to face with Hermione and is still very kind of cold towards her, despite saying that Rita Skeeter is, full of shit. And it takes Harry being like, hey, that what Rita wrote about me, that's not true. Hermione's not my girlfriend. And all of a sudden she's like, oh yeah, I would never believe that.
It's like, yeah, okay, Molly.
Doesn't really even apologize to Hermione. It's just like starts being nicer to her.
She really should apologize. She owes her an apology and a much better Easter basket.
Yeah.
So finally, they start this task. We're finally doing this, the third task of the Triwizard Tournament. And this one has some supervisors, so some of the Hogwarts professors who basically are going to walk around the maze. And if the kids get into trouble, if they're hurt, if they need to basically quit for any reason, they can send up sparks and someone will come and get them out of the maze, basically, and they can just back out. And I'm like, first of all, I love that this is finally a thing, an option, some sort of safety protocol. I love that they tell them ahead of time that this is an option. Like, hey, just so you know, if you think you're dying, you can get out. It's fine. But I also wonder, like, how is this possible? They can just shoot up wand sparks and then be out of the tournament, because they told Harry he had no choice because of magical reasons. So I'm kind of like, okay, so they tell him at any point, if you think it's too much, you can just magic sparks and get out of here. Harry has the very valid option to spend 1 minute in that maze tying his shoe and then shoot up sparks and get out and just not risk dying. Like, to me, if it's possible to back out, then Dumbledore and the authorities should have been like, this is your moment, back out.
I feel like that's like a loophole, because the magic contract's like you have to do the tournament's 3 tasks. So I feel like if you get in, you're in the 3rd task.
Yeah, it kind of seems like dumb that rule exists. Okay, could Harry have quit at the beginning of every task? Ooh, I'm going to walk out, see a dragon, and faint. Oh well, next task. Jump in the lake, swim a few laps, be like, never mind, I'm drowning because I can't breathe underwater. I quit. I guess Harry didn't pass this task. Like, valid options. Were they the whole time? Is this lack of transparency? Is this 3rd task just the special you can opt out partway through if you get scared task? Is it a third task specialty? I don't know. But Harry now finally sort of has this option to back the heck out, and he doesn't.
No, it's not in his character. I feel like the tournament also kind of relies on the people that are doing this tournament, like, are the people that kind of, like, they won't back out. But I thought it was just, this is like the task, like, the second task, everyone was just watching the lake for an hour. And this is like the same thing where the school is just watching a maze. They can't see inside of it. They're just watching a maze until someone comes out.
I assume the seats are like elevated, and so they're looking down so they can see over the hedges to see what's going on. Or maybe it's like a magic thing where like they can't see from inside the maze, but above them floating in the sky is like a little dot representing each of them or whatever. So you can see where they are from up high up, even if you can't see exactly what they're doing. You know, I'd like to think there's also play by play.
Yeah, they should have something like the Hunger Games where there's like cameras so they can see what's happening inside.
Yes.
But that probably would be not beneficial to Moody's plan.
Yeah, counterproductive.
Because, he's, doing things that he shouldn't be doing.
Up to no good. Yeah. I just think it's so weird how Harry, who never asked to be in the competition and was told he had to participate fully, finally gets an opt-out option, but he sort of opts out of opting out. He's gotten this far now, and he wants to win, and he wants to prove himself, and he wants to earn the respect of the people at Hogwarts who'd been sort of being dicks to him ever since he got put in. And I find he does do a really good job once he gets into this maze. Like, he's not being frantic and running around like a crazy person, and he's stopping regularly to check his compass spell. He's taking his time. And this really is the perfect task for him because it really is the same type of thing Voldemort has already made him do twice in previous years, And it kind of makes me wonder if, like, the tournament planners, like Dumbledore, for example, know Harry's history and chose a task they knew he could excel at because Dumbledore wants Harry to win and learn things and overcome or whatever, and other people want him not dead. Or did the Death Eaters, having known Harry's history because they were the ones trying to kill him, manipulated the situation so this was the task, again, because they knew it was something Harry would excel at? Or is it just luck? He just got lucky that the third task happens to be the thing he does regularly and is good at. Like, it could have been a magical spelling bee and he would have absolutely lost, and that would have really ruined Voldemort's plan. So, like, is it luck or manipulation? And if it's manipulation, is it the good guys manipulating it so Harry will learn things and not die, or the bad guys manipulating it so Harry will win the tournament and then die?
Yeah, it feels like the third task does seem kind of like a good third task, as it's kind of testing like everything for them, that like they have to find something and they have to go through multiple different kind of like tests of their abilities, where the first two tasks were kind of like two different tasks testing two kind of like different elements of them as a person, but this is kind of like everything. I just don't know how, Dumbledore wouldn't know that Harry would be in the task, I mean, you think, and then I wouldn't know how Moody, as Death Eater Moody, would have like sway to kind of be choosing what the tasks would be.
But I mean, the teachers helped fill the maze. So in my mind, like, they were part of discussions about what the third task would be. And whether or not the maze part was chosen by them, what type of obstacles were put in it to make it similar to things Harry's done before, was clearly up for discussion.
Yeah, I feel like that part could definitely be fake Moody being like, oh, as my experience with Aura, we should have this, this, and this.
Yeah.
To test the students.
Yeah, Minerva being like, this one time I made this giant chess set, and...
But I feel like it's a really big foreshadowing hint that most of the paths Harry's on are empty. Like, he walks around a lot.
Yeah, at least clearly Moody, aka Crouch, has an idea where Harry is in the maze and has to be doing something, because they don't know which directions he's going to take and which directions the others will take. So there has to be some active manipulation going on to remove those tasks from Harry's path. I think the Boggart specifically is such a great choice of creature for this task. Like, because it's the thing you're the most afraid of, it's such a good test of their bravery. It's such a fun thing. It's different for all of the if they ran into each other and had a chat in the maze, Cedric would say, "You're not going to believe it, but it's my dad publicly talking about how great I am in front of people, and it's really embarrassing. The scariest thing in the maze. Watch out, Harry." Like, different experience for each of them, I think is really interesting. Also, I think the Scroots are an interesting choice. I wonder if Hagrid planned for the Scroods to be used in the task. Like at the beginning of the year, they said, Hagrid, you need to create some cool creature. And then he decided to get the students to help by making the Scroods their project. Or if he just happened to invent Scroods and the students were working on it. And because they ended up being these massive, terrifying beasts, someone then suggested, oh, Hagrid, they would be great in our maze. Like, I wonder which happened first.
I feel like it was a happy accident, because I feel like Hagrid always leans towards kind of crazy creatures, and he probably like crossbred these Scroots from something, and they needed some kind of purpose because he'd probably get in trouble for that. So it's just like, oh, it's for the tournament.
I will say crossbreeding weird monsters and then sticking them in tunnels and or caves and or mazes does not help Hagrid's I swear I didn't put a snake in the Chamber of Secrets business.
Yeah.
He's like, I didn't crossbreed weird animals that'll attack students later. I was accused of it once, but this time's different. This time I did do it. Like,
and the chapter's kind of, I don't want to say boring, but it's mostly just like Harry's in an empty tunnel and he's looking for stuff and nothing's really happening until Harry hears Fleur scream. And he's really, at first, really kind of concerned about what happened to Fleur, despite knowing the professors are patrolling outside and will come to help her. But it's kind of like his savior complex coming out. But then, immediately afterwards, he's like actually one person down. So he's a bit competitive there as well.
It's fun that his initial reflex is someone's in danger. How can I help them? What's happening to them? And then his like thinking it through is like, his second thought is, okay, this helps me. It tells a lot about him as a person. Which one is the reflex and which one is the lingering afterthought that he feels bad about having?
Yeah.
I think it bothers me that the author chose to have Crumb be the one under the Imperious curse that hurts Fleur. And I think it's partially because Fleur is the only girl in this tournament, and that means she failed to complete 2 of the tasks. And I just think it's sad that happened to the girl, like especially as a book that boys and girls read growing up, and boys are like, oh, girls can't do sports, girls can't compete, girls can't. And like, I wish she hadn't decided to just have Fleur be the one that fails the tasks the most. Like, I didn't love that. And I also think it kind of furthers the stereotype that like people from Durmstrang or who have a former Death Eater as a teacher are automatically evil. Like, I think it would have been way more interesting for Fleur to have been under the Imperious curse and attacked Crumb. I just would have loved how it subverted sort of those stereotypes. And I would have preferred that if the author needed someone to fail this task. I wish it wasn't always Fleur. Plus, I think it would have been more interesting as like a hint or a foreshadow that maybe something in the maze wasn't going as the tournament committee planned, because it was way too easy to paint Crumb as like, oh, I guess he's just evil and that's why he's doing crime. But if Fleur, who they generally agree is a reasonably good person, was the one using an unforgivable curse, I think it would have given that interesting tidbit of like letting people know there's some other power about manipulating this game. I just thought that was like, that would have been so much more interesting and effective than just like, oh, stereotypes, girls can't do the thing, and guys who hang out at the danger school must be bad guys.
I feel like the deal with Crumb is that it was supposed to kind of be disguised by the idea that like, oh, Crumb's evil, and like, oh, that makes sense because he's from like, you know, the dark arts school. The idea of what this chapter where the end that ends with the port key, it's supposed to like really kind of like shock you. And so the idea of Crumb churning, it's like crazy, but like you're like, oh, maybe we were wrong about Crumb. But I definitely feel like Fleur always being like caught and stuff's kind of annoying because there are a lot of strong female characters in this book, but I feel like Fleur's kind of targeted because she's that like
the extra. She's the extra candidate. They want Cedric to do well on things, and they want Crumb to be tough because he's a professional athlete. So they just decide, oh, she's basically the Hufflepuff in the situation, despite not being in Hufflepuff. She's the extra one. If something bad needs to happen, we'll just let it happen to her. And I just hate that she's like an add-on. I'm like, no, she's valid and she's clearly very talented, or she wouldn't have been chosen. And I just hate that she always has to be the one who doesn't complete the tasks.
Because I feel like the women in this series that are kind of like conventionally pretty and, you know, they're kind of made to seem as vapid, or like if they have interests in like normally girly things, like you think of Lavender Parvati, they're meant to be seen as kind of like not as good as Hermione because, you know, Hermione's serious and she's really smart. and that's better.
There's that weird problematic feminist view throughout that's not true feminism that basically says, yes, girls can be as good as boys, but as long as they reject traditionally girly things, because you can't be a girl who is girly and also be awesome, because those two don't exist together. So like Hermione has her Cinderella moment and stuff, but generally she's a tomboy, Ginny's a tomboy, they don't care what their hair looks like, that's not their priority. And it's like, it's definitely a huge stereotype that's a counterproductive for actual feminism, because you can be beautiful and put mascara on every day and still be really smart and talented. And it's clearly something the author didn't realize or didn't know how to write well enough.
Yeah, and it's something that really follows Fleur as she becomes like more of a character and her and Bill get engaged, where Ginny and Hermione and Mrs. Weasley kind of talk down about her, and Harry does mention that, she got into the tournament, that she was smart and like capable enough to be able to do that.
It's not her fault she's really hot. Like, why is that? Why does that mean she can't also be interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely such a huge stereotype and such a like counterproductive view of feminism, because she can be a badass. Let her be a badass. I don't get it. Let Crumb fail for once. I don't know. It bothered me. I think it could have been done much better. And it bothers me that it's always Fleur. Like, Cedric could have easily done the worst at the dragon task and still come out and tied with Harry later on. She just picks Fleur for all the failure, and it bugs me.
Yeah.
One of the other things I really liked about the maze is the inclusion of the Sphinx. I think it really speaks to the fact that they want a champion who excels in various types of skills. So it's not just like how strong are you, how quick are you, how good are you at defensive magic. It's also logic. And it took like the riddle. I don't know if you did the riddle yourself or not, because I can never remember the answer. So I'm always redoing the riddle. And I find that when it comes to the hint, I always get the middle part first. The middle of middle and the end of end. I'm like, it's D. It's like my brain immediately solves that one. And it takes me a while to get to spy. Like, I run through a couple different options before I get to spy. But what gets me on the last part is basically what you say when you can't think of a word. I always think and the answer is So I'm like running through options with for a while before I get to the option that some people would say
Maybe that's like a Britishism where they're like
Yeah, it must be.
Because I think is more, or is more common.
Yeah, exactly. That's always how I would break it down. I'm always like, okay, middle part, I've got it. I need to run through a few options for the first part. And then I just fail for a while trying to make it work with And I'm like, okay, what are the alternatives? Like, until I get spy, I'm using the wrong ending.
I think I got spy pretty easily, but it was like the last two. I'm like,
I love this. I wish they'd included this in I know it's not as visually stimulating in the movie, but like, I think they should have included it because, again, it diversifies the type of skills you need to have in the maze. And I feel like seeing a Sphinx would be awesome. Like, it would be fun to watch Harry think for a minute. They don't have to make it a long scene, but I think it's fun to have him stop and do a different kind of...
Yeah, I feel like at this point in the film, they really want to keep, like, the pacing up.
Yeah.
To get to kind of, like, the biggest part of the movie, which is seeing Voldemort again.
Yeah.
So the maze and the third task part before Harry and Cedric leave is like pretty like intense.
I feel like it should have been included. They could have had Harry feeling kind of stressed and frantic and like he needs to rush, like had him act out, making it feel stressful, even though the Sphinx itself is kind of calm and like think about it. But Harry's like, oh no, I can't think. Hermione does the thinking. What am I going to do? Like, you just see a little bit of face acting from Daniel Radcliffe, because I know he can do that. I think would have been enough to keep the pace fast, because he's fast thinking. He's like, okay, wait, what? Sorry, what? Huh? Oh dear. Like, it didn't have to be long, but he could have acted out being frantic enough that we stay anxious with him.
Before kind of Cedric and Harry are neck and neck for the cup, obviously we heard Cedric get attacked by Crumb, and he's like super shocked by it. And also Harry's savior complex coming through, because he just could have gone on, but he like makes a hole in the hedge to like go help Cedric, because, can't leave a Hogwarts student in peril. But even like Cedric and Harry are just kind of like, I thought he was cool. Like, I never would have considered this.
Just a casual bro moment. Like, wow, I did not see that coming. Like recapping a movie or something. I think Cedric is just such a good dude.
Yeah.
Like, this moment when him and Harry are both standing there right next to basically the cup and having won the tournament, this would have been his first chance to truly be a winner or get celebrated or really be the center of attention in anyone's eyes besides his father. And I think it was really, really good of him to want to let Harry just take it. You know what I mean? Harry gets to be a hero and a winner every year, basically, whether it be the House Cup or just another Harry Potter fighting Voldemort adventure. Like, Harry always comes out on top and is generally the center of attention a lot of times. And this was Cedric's one moment, and he was like, "You helped me, you take it." It's just so.
Yeah, because you can see how much Cedric wants it, but there's just something in him that's like it wasn't he didn't feel like he earned it because he's like, Harry's helped me, you've helped me through all these things.
Yeah, I wonder if he has a higher standard for what he needs to do to earn something because he has a father who thinks breathing deserves everything. Like, thinks that just Cedric's mere existence deserves all the awards and trophies and accolades. So he's like, that's bullshit. And so he holds himself to a higher standard of like, I have to do more. I have to earn it more than everyone else to earn it at all, you know?
I don't think Moody, or fake Moody, I should say, planned for how good of a person Cedric was going to be, or Harry's empathy, because they're arguing back and forth about who deserves to win, which is really funny. Because Harry's like, well, we're square because you gave me the hint about like the egg. And Cedric's like, well, actually, I had help with that. And he's like, well, you helped me with this, and I should have done this. And then it's just very Harry that he's like, you know what, we both deserve this.
I feel like it would have been a good moment for a Harry joke where he's like, well, you just told me to go take a bath. And that wasn't like the most helpful. It was a little weird. I was accosted by a ghost, but still, you're a great guy. Because like calling him out for how fucking vague that hint was would have been very sassy Harry.
And I think it's also very sad that like Harry's empathy and goodness and just wanting to like do right by Cedric is what kind of unintentionally gets Cedric killed. Obviously, it's not Harry's fault, but no one thought that he would bring Cedric there.
Yeah.
Because no one really knew the kind of person Harry was. And this is the first time where, like, you know, he can't save someone. He's always saved everyone, every book, except for this. And it's also hard because Cedric was just there unintentionally. It wasn't like...
He was an innocent bystander.
Yeah.
Casualty, you know? I think it's very interesting that Harry's experience in the maze sort of directly calls upon the specific skill sets of each of the 4 Hogwarts houses. And I don't know if it was on purpose, but it's very interesting. Like, there's the Ravenclaw logic, which is the Sphinx riddle. And then there's the Gryffindor bravery, which is, to me, most specifically the Boggart, because it's his worst fear. And then with Hufflepuff, it's that sense of, like, fairness. And Harry keeps helping Cedric and helping Fleur. And even, like, earlier on, you know what I mean? He wouldn't have made it through this tournament and survived that spider at the end if Cedric wasn't still there to help him beat the spider. And so like his fairness and sense of fair play and friendship got him through that as well. And then there's the Slytherin ambition, which to me is Harry's decision to not just send up Sparks and get out, because that was a very valid risk-free option, but also him wanting to win and become champion, which is sort of what pushed him through the maze most of the time. But it's also really interesting that what would have been the most obvious Slytherin option would have been for him to just take that cup before Cedric, like to just accept it and be the sole champion. It kind of feels like Harry rejecting that Slytherin option to be the sole winner and get the credit and succeed is what gets Cedric involved and brought to the cemetery. And Cedric coming along is really like the unforeseen element in Voldemort's plan. He did not account for that. And it's because Voldemort himself couldn't imagine a situation where a person would not want to be the only winner and have all that glory to himself.
Yeah.
And I think it says a lot about the weakness of Voldemort, because he can plan for a lot, but he has an absolute blindness for things that he can't understand, like friendship, humbleness, deprioritizing one's own glory. That inability to understand friendship and love is often the thing that ends up ruining Voldemort's plan. Like every time. You can think in book 7 with Narcissa. She doesn't lie to Voldemort for pride or self-worth or joy or glory. Because she loves Draco, she lies to Voldemort. And he just can't even imagine that as an option because he can't relate to that. And this is like one of the earliest examples of like, he can't account for the thing he doesn't even understand, which is that sense of friendship and fairness being placed above self-gratification and personal success.
Yeah, well, the chapter ends with Harry and Cedric going for a ride in a portkey. So this whole thing's just really been a setup for this, like, these next few chapters. So we're finally, like, you know, getting to, like, the meat of Goblet of Fire.
Yeah, it's the big reveal, you know? It's not a plot twist because we kind of knew treachery was afoot from the beginning, but it's finally the payoff for those of us who are like,
yeah,
how did Harry's name get in the Goblet of Fire? it's finally we get the payoff for all those things. So it's exciting. But it's funny because it's such a moment where like it should be over. Like they should be able to be so relieved now and like hold hands and high five and have a cry or whatever, hug their parents or hug Ron's parents. But instead it's just like it's a false ending kind of, which is I think interesting. Your brain finally breathes in that sigh of relief, like, okay, Harry did it. This is over. And it's like, oh no, no, no. It gets worse now.
Yeah, I remember reading this part as a kid because I was also excited because it was getting to like the end, so you're like excited to get to the end of this like tournament and realizing that the cup was a port key and it didn't take them to like, you know, outside the maze where they won. It took them to this graveyard and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shit's happening. And it was just very exciting as a kid.
Especially because I love spooky things and it's a graveyard, so I'm automatically on board. I'm like, yes.
I was also reading this past my bedtime, so I was like, you know, like, oh my god, things are going crazy. I can't possibly go to bed now.
Yeah, I definitely, especially when I was younger, and like I lived with my parents and my mom would expect me to go to bed like a normal person. There were times where she would come in to say you're up early and I hadn't realized I was up early because I was still up because I had not been able to put the books down.
Yeah, but do you have any final remarks for this chapter?
I'm excited for the next chapter. Things get sort of serious.
Yeah, so am I.
Even though this chapter, like they were all at risk, blah blah blah. The knowing that there's teachers supervising, knowing that there's people walking around checking for sparks, making sure they're alive in there. There's a level of safety, and as soon as you know you're not in that anymore, it really elevates the danger and the risk.
You're thinking this is kind of like the end of the series as we know it going into this next chapter, because this is kind of like the childhood, like school kind of like tournament, and we're really leaving that safety of Hogwarts. And after these next chapters, like the whole series is not the same afterwards.
Yeah, I think seeing someone die for Harry, seeing Cedric die for Harry, is the moment he stops being a child. Like he doesn't get to be a kid anymore. He's a teenager and he goes through teenage angst things and he makes teenager style decisions sometimes, but he's not a child anymore. That seeing Thestrals is not the only change after this. You know what I mean? The reality of I can't save everyone kicks in. The reality that perfectly wonderful innocent people are going to die kicks in, and it changes the game for Harry for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely, this book is definitely like the biggest like turning point, but this is the kind of end of like the chapter where things are, you know, everything's easily resolved and, you know, things end well for Harry. It doesn't really work out for him.
Yeah.
That's it for us for now. Thank you for listening for this episode. We will return to Goblet of Fire, Chapter 32, Flesh, Blood, and Bone. Very spooky chapter title. You can listen to this episode on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Leave us a comment on Spotify. You can reach out to us on social media at Pottery Visited, or you can email us at potteryvisitedpodcast@gmail.com, and we will see you next time.
Bye.